Hello, everybody. Hoping you're having a fantastic Friday. Welcome to another episode of At the Coalface Live for Friday, 14th of January, 2022. Can't believe we're halfway through January of 2022. We're going to be taking a slightly different approach to the broadcast today. You can probably see, or at least hopefully you can see, a bit of a screen share happening here, which is a screen grab or screen share of a slide deck, which is a bit of a presentation around our Greenwood Consulting Fit for Commerce framework. And I wanted to just share this with you. Obviously, it's still pretty high level. It doesn't get into the absolute, completely granular nitty gritty of the framework. And as part of the framework, there's a lot of supporting collateral and documentation that goes along with our framework. But this is the framework that we use in our consulting work when we start to go in and we start working with new businesses around digital transformation, around when they're wanting to replatform, when they're wanting to do new technology deployments, when they're wanting to really undergo sort of systemic digital transformation across the entire business. This is the framework that we use. This is the framework that we work to. And I felt like it was probably a pretty good time to share that with you. In fact, what I'm happy to do after this broadcast is if you drop the word yes in the comments on LinkedIn for this broadcast once it ends, then what I'll do is I will direct message you a copy of this document, a copy of this slide deck as a PDF. So it'll be a PDF. We'll download it as a PDF, and then we'll send it off to you as a PDF so that you can use this inside your own business to provide a bit of guardrails, a bit of guidelines around how you can kick off a bit of the digital transformation process in your business without sort of throwing a dart at a dartboard. You can actually have a framework to work with that helps you to understand some of the steps that you need to go through, some of the considerations that you need to take when you are going through a digital transformation process. Now, with Greenwood Consulting, we primarily are consulting on e-commerce, but we also consult on the entirety of the digital commerce stack. So we consult on things like ERP and CRM and CDP and PIM and WMSs, so warehouse management systems, OMSs, order management systems. We consult on point of sale systems. We consult on systems integration and data integration. And so as a result of that, when we go in, and oftentimes we're called in to help with, say, for example, and consult on a replatform of e-commerce, but oftentimes what we find when we start to dig under the bonnet and when we start to get into the business, what we start to realize is that they need to look at some of their core foundational operational systems first before they can look at a replatform of e-com. So sometimes they're either running a really legacy backend system like a legacy order management system or a legacy WMS or a legacy ERP or no ERP at all. And oftentimes when we come in, they're at a stage of growth where they need to look at their foundational systems that sit underneath e-commerce and support e-commerce before they can actually think about their front-end e-commerce and omni-channel experience that goes along with that. So with that in mind, I'll jump into that. And hey, Gareth, fantastic to have you along for the ride today. Interesting that you're able to comment on LinkedIn there, because I got a message from StreamYard the last time I streamed that for some reason, LinkedIn live streams, that the messages that come in from LinkedIn live streams weren't showing in StreamYard. There was something wrong with the API or something like that over at LinkedIn that didn't allow that to happen anymore. But obviously they fixed whatever that problem is. LinkedIn seems to have fixed that problem, because I can see your comments there. Happy New Year. And yes, please. So I'll be happy, absolutely happy to send this through to you once we're done with the broadcast. So it's awesome to have you along for the ride today. So I'm going to actually go into the presentation, and I'll go into present mode here. So we'll go into slideshow mode. And you may have seen something similar to this before with other, I guess, consultants or other vendors, other partners, other people that work in our space. You may have seen something similar to this, but we want to make it very, very clear right from the outset, whenever we start working with a new client and we're starting to work through the digital transformation process with them, we want to make it very, very clear that from our perspective, people come first. They are absolutely at the heart of every single thing you will do as a business. They are important to be able to achieve your goals. They are important to be able to serve your customers at a high level and have empathy with your customers. And then ultimately, people being your customers. So internal and external people are absolutely mission critical to your business. And without people, without relationships, without that human connection, you won't have a business for very long, or at least it won't be as successful as it could be. So we want to call out straight out the gate that people are at the heart of everything we do, and people are at the heart of everything you do as a business, as an organization, as a brand. When you're interfacing with the public, it is the people inside your organization, it is the resources, it is the capabilities within your organization that make all of this possible. Without the right people, without the right organizational structure, you will never be able to, meet the expectations that you have for your business and meet your full potential. So people are right at the heart of everything that we do. If we go straight up from the people piece, we have the process piece. And process is primarily around business processes, but it could be financial processes. It's many other processes within the business, but they fall primarily within that bucket of business process. What are the processes that you're running today? And I'll get into more detail in a second on this. But when you are running your business, what are the processes that you must do, that you want to do, and that you should do to be successful as a business? If we move around to the right there, we move into the technology sphere. Now, technology for us is just an enabler, right? It is in and of itself, technology will not make your business successful. It can certainly help you be more successful. It can certainly help you be more efficient. It can certainly help bring processes to your business by default that maybe you don't have already, or there are gaps in your processes. And oftentimes when you implement a piece of technology, it has inherent processes built in as part and parcel of that technology deployment that can bring rigor or can bring definition to your processes that you do not have today. So I don't want to downplay the importance of technology, but it really is just an enabler. And so when we start looking at the full technology stack that you need in your business, we look at it through the lens of people, through process, through data. We look at these multifaceted lenses when we start to think about the technology that either you have today in your business, where are the gaps and where do we need to get to, and how are we going to roadmap you getting there from a technology perspective. We look at that through the lens of enablement. We look at that through the lens of empowerment. We look at that at the lens of gap filling. So technology is just an enabler for your business to be able to do things better, faster, more efficient, and perhaps bringing new functionality and new elements to the customer experience through technology. But ultimately, again, we have to look at that through the lens of people before we can do anything meaningful in the areas of technology. The final puzzle piece there on the bottom left-hand side is data. And we look primarily at three different aspects of data when we're going through digital transformation with business. It is product data, it is customer data, and then it's analytics, both clickstream analytics, also predictive analytics. There's a lot wrapped up in the analytics piece, but really we look at product data, we look at customer data, and we look at analytics data. So those are the kind of four components of the Fit for Commerce framework that we're going to be discussing today. I'm really excited to share this with you. And as I said, there's a lot more collateral that goes along with this. There's a lot more supporting documentation. There's templates that we use for discovery processes, hundreds and hundreds of questions as we go through discovery with businesses. There are templates that we use for business requirements documents and RFPs and solution specifications and all sorts of other, documentation that we use to help achieve digital transformation, but they all support this Fit for Commerce framework. And what Fit for Commerce really does is it starts to take a very critical look at your business to ensure that you're putting the groundwork in place, that you're putting the people, the processes, the technology, and the data in place to allow you to have the greatest chance of digital commerce success. So that's really ultimately what Fit for Commerce is designed to do. It's designed to identify the strengths, and it's almost like a SWOT analysis of your business from a digital commerce perspective and a digital transformation perspective, and allows you to set about gap filling within your business. Now, if we move on to the first slide here, which is the people piece. So as you can see, we're gonna work through this diagram, and we're gonna work through it slide by side. There's one slide dedicated to each component of the framework, and we're just gonna work through those top to bottom there. So the people piece, top left hand side there, you can see that there's the people piece. This is the first piece that we always look at. And as I said before, we consider that people are at the core of all that you do as a business. You can't do anything successful without people. People determine success or failure of your business. So what we tend to do from there is we start to assess stakeholder needs and expectations. What is it that the primary stakeholders in the business, whether that be the C-suite, whether that be upper management, whether that be individual departmental leads, whether that be some of the SMEs, the subject matter experts within each department that have to get their job done every single day. What are some of those stakeholder needs and expectations? And that usually takes the form of interviews and questions, so that we're starting to capture some of the expectations and the requirements for each major stakeholder in a given piece of work or a given project at a given point in time. And those stakeholders may change depending on the life cycle that you're at as a business, depending on the stage that you're at in your digital transformation journey. The stakeholders that need to be involved at that point in time, they may change as you evolve, as you go through those processes. So from there, what we really want to look at is we want to assess capabilities and gaps in capabilities. So what we want to do is we want to look at, okay, who are the people in your business today that are involved in digital, that are involved in e-commerce, that are involved in omni-channel? What are the people that are involved in, all of your internal logistics and what are the internal capability sets that you have around digital today that we can leverage, that we need to leverage, that we need to bring into this entire process to make sure that we're making the best use of your existing capabilities that you have today. And maybe even, it might even be a bit of a stretch for some of those people. It might be a stretch for some of those roles. But, oftentimes if you have people that are hungry and are keen to learn, then obviously you can upskill both internally and externally by bringing in external consultants such as myself and other people. You can bring them in to do and perform skill transfers between those external resources and those internal resources that you have that you can leverage and grow with. Then what we want to do is we want to start identifying some gaps. Where are the key gaps in your internal capabilities as a business around digital transformation, digital upskilling, and ultimately digital commerce delivery across the whole of the business? So, do you have people that are highly technical in the business, but you don't have people for the marketing aspects of the business? Do you have a really, really strong marketing capability in the business, but have very little technical understanding, technical capability in the business? Do you have, maybe the marketing is a little bit nailed down, and maybe you have some technical capabilities in the business, but you don't necessarily have much innovation happening in the business. You don't have much vision happening in the business. You don't have, maybe you don't have a formalized customer feedback loop in the business. So there's all sorts of things that we need to look at here when we're looking at the people. The people aspects of the business are super, super critical to the success or failure of your digital transformation and your digital upskilling, your digital capability assessment. The people just absolutely matter. They're so critical to absolutely everything that you do, that unless you get this part right, you're pretty much almost guaranteed to fail in your digital transformation journey. The final piece of the puzzle after that is we start to think about, what does the correct organizational design look like? What are the role prioritizations that you have both today, and also what does a roadmap of org design look like for your business? So, okay, here we've got this organizational design today. This is what our sort of people and their roles and their reporting lines and their responsibilities and their accountabilities. This is what we look like today. But we know in 12, 24, 36 months time, we know at our current growth rate, we know where we're likely to be as a business. And so therefore we can kind of forecast out, what does the roadmap need to look like, that we're going to need to start plugging in some additional resources systematically over time when we hit these milestones of growth, or when we hit these milestones of maturity. So there's two ways you can measure this. It's growth, typically in revenue and or profitability, and then also in growth in terms of maturity of the business. So as we reach different stages of maturity as a business, we now need to plug in additional resources where the people that we have today that maybe got us from 0 to 1, they're not going to be necessarily the same set of people, or on their own, they're not going to be able to get us to 1 to 2 or 1 to 5. So we need to roadmap out, okay, what does org design look like today that can meet the needs of the business today, or at least meet the needs right up until the end of maybe this initial deployment or this initial implementation of a given project or a given piece of work. But then, will those people be sufficient? Will those resources, will those capabilities in the business be sufficient for 6 months out, 12 months out, 18 months out, 24 months, 36 months out? Probably not. If you're on a decent growth trajectory, it's highly unlikely that they will. So we need to roadmap out, what does it look like from an org design perspective between current state, future state, and what is that likely to look like? Now, obviously, you need to be able to have a little bit of flexibility to adjust along the journey. But if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, as my mother used to tell me when I was a kid. So we need to have something to aim for, some goals to shoot for along the process. Now, if we move to the next puzzle piece, we're starting to now look at processes. So you need to review your existing business processes. And what I find is that oftentimes businesses have landed at a specific process organically, which means they didn't do it intentionally. They just started running a business, they started operating their business, and as they grew and as they added people, as they added services, as they added products, they just started doing things slightly differently over time because they needed to do things differently to service that product, to sell that product, to engage with customers, to engage with internal stakeholders, to do all the things they do, to do their marketing, whatever it might be. We have certain business processes, and oftentimes they were not necessarily built with intention in mind. They just organically happened as a result of the circumstances that the business found it in at any given point in time. So this is really an opportunity to look at every single business process, flare out, to take a very, very broad view, to document literally every single, what is the financial processes that look like? What are your BAU, business as usual, business processes that you do every single day that you don't necessarily even think about? What are the processes you do today? Every single department, every single person in the business, what are the processes that they follow, particularly at least in the work that I do? Obviously, this is specifically in relation to digital commerce. Usually, even if it's ERP, the functions that happen and the processes that happen inside ERP have a massive, massive impact on digital commerce, because typically that's where products are initially onboarded in the business to begin with, to be able to then sell. So, and typically when they come into an ERP, for example, they've only got bare bones amount of information and they're not ready to sell through digital channels out the gate. They might have a name, they might have a SKU, they might have a price, and they might have an inventory count, but that might be about it that they have in an ERP to begin with. So we have to start thinking about, okay, how does a product come into the business? How does a customer come into the business? What is the journey of a product through the business, all the way through the point where it's sold and potentially returned by a customer? What's the journey of a customer, right from the point where they become aware of your business, right to the point where they become a prospect, an actual customer, and then perhaps and hopefully a repeat customer? What do those processes look like? What do they look like when you get onboarded? How do they get onboarded into your loyalty program? Or how do they sign up for your newsletter list? And what does that look like? And do they go into a catch-all newsletter list, or do they go into a segmented list? What do all of these processes look like as a business? In each and every department, we have to look at finance. We have to look at procurement. We have to look at warehousing and logistics. We have to look at absolutely every single business process in the business, and we have to document that top to bottom. And then and only then can we start thinking about, once we've documented literally every single step of every single function and every single operation in the business, only once we've done that can we start thinking about, okay, now that we've got this documented and we have a really, really clear understanding of what these look like, which processes can, should, and or must be digitally supported or led? So in other words, if we're a B2B business today, for example, and we have a sales team, an internal sales team, for example, and let's say that customers would typically, if they want to get a quote for a product or for an order or a specific range of products, whatever it might be, if the current process is, okay, the customer will email their account manager with the list of products that they want to buy, and they will get a custom quote for each and every purchase, or each and every prospective purchase, they will get a custom quote. Okay, well, we now know that we need to be able to support digital quote requests and digital quote responses as a result. If we want to digitalize all these processes, or if we want to offer a digital alternative to these currently manual processes, then we need to know what we have to support. We're not thinking about the how yet. That's in the solution architecture phase, but we at least need to know what is it that we need to support? What is it that we need to translate from a process perspective? Which processes do we need to translate from these very analog or very manual processes into some form of automation, some form of digitalization? Which items, which processes, which steps need to be can, should, and must be digitally supported or led. So do we want to go from a manual process to a digitally led process instead? So we start to match that up. The next step is matching processes with solutions. So which are there some technology platforms? Are there some processes, or is there a piece of technology in the business already that maybe we're not leveraging fully? Where, for example, let's say let's say you are a B2B business and you have a CRM, but that's currently only used from the quote to cash phase of an engagement with a customer, or a prospect to cash phase of a customer. But let's say that CRM also has a help desk component, but you're not using it. And you want to go from, say, a manual help desk where it's just all email driven to now we want to have a proper help desk, a proper ticketing system, proper escalations, proper tracking, proper analytics of the types of inbound requests that we're getting, and our response times, and all those sorts of things. If we want to really level up our game from a customer service perspective, maybe our existing CRM can do that, but we're just not using it in that way yet. Maybe it's got the ability to do that, but we're not just using it that way yet. So this is where we start matching up processes with solutions, either existing technology, existing capability within the business, and we're now going to digitalize that within that framework, or we realize, hey, actually, we don't have anything in the business that would allow us to do this today. So we need to start performing and thinking about a search and select for a technology or a third-party system or vendor that can start to plug some of these gaps in our processes as we convert them from a manual or analog process into a much more digital, streamlined, automated process. So we start to assess process gaps in solutions as well. So we look at scenarios where our current processes have gaps. In other words, maybe you had a limitation in the business because you had a human resource limitation, and so therefore you know what you would like the perfect process to be, but you can't do it because you don't have the resource to implement that process. So you've kind of as part of your process, maybe you've got some shortcuts, or maybe you've got some gaps that don't allow you to do the level of reporting that you'd like to do, for example, or the level of customer service that you'd like to give. You're short-circuiting that process because you either don't have the people, you don't have the technology, and therefore, as a result of that, you simply you recognize already that there are some gaps in your processes that you've never bothered to fill for whatever reason. And so therefore, we now need to identify what those gaps are that you would like to fill in your business process. And we start thinking about what are some solutions that might be able to be brought to bear in the business to plug those gaps. Then off the backside of that, ultimately where you end up at the end of this entire journey is you end up with business process design. And so now we're gonna document the translation of those existing or those legacy business processes, and what is that future state going to look like once you've finished the process and the rollout of that digital transformation of those processes. What is the end state now going to look like? What are the steps? So remember, in the beginning, we've documented all of our business processes for each department, and each major subject matter expert is going to be documenting their processes. Now, what does the future state look like? What does their perfect future state look like? And then what we do is we're going to roadmap through business process design. We're going to roadmap current state all the way through the steps that we're going to take to get to that ideal future state from a process perspective. And we're going to draw that up, and it usually takes the form of a graph. It usually takes the form of a diagram. There's a number of different ways to draw out your business process design. You can use something like Miro. There's a number of different tools and technologies that can ease this visualization of your business processes as you go through the business process design phase. But regardless of what tool you use, I mean, you could use literally physical Post-it notes and then take digital pictures of those and then share those with the business if that's all you've got. But there are definitely tools and technologies that can allow business process design to be faster and easier to share and easier to collaborate on internally as a business. But that's kind of that final step. After you've done all the planning, then we end up with business process design. Now, the next piece that we start looking at is the technology piece. And as I mentioned before, we very much view technology as an enabler. And it can be a disabler too. A lot of times when we go in and we look at technology, that businesses maybe they even look at it as a bit of a sacred cow. They might have a piece of technology that they absolutely love, but once you get in there, you start to realize that this technology is actually holding the business back. They might love it only because they know it. And sometimes change is difficult. And so businesses will want to limit the amount of change management they have to undergo as part of the digital transformation journey. And as a result of that, sometimes they, it's like they've still got an umbilical cord attached to a legacy piece of technology. And sometimes when we go in and we start looking at these pieces of technology, we can identify straight away that sometimes it's the technology that is actually preventing this business from getting ahead, from maturing, from going through that process of digital transformation, because it just simply is not fit for purpose anymore because it's a legacy piece of technology. And that's where it requires us as consultants to be honest and tell a business when their baby is ugly. It is our job to do that, because oftentimes internally, it's not politically expedient for internal resources to be able to tell a boss, a manager, a CXO. It is not really expedient for them to be able to be honest with the business and say, hey, our technology stack is ugly. Our baby is ugly. And because they could be risking their job, they could be risking a promotion, they could be risking, they could be risking all sorts of things. If the business hasn't created an environment where the staff feels safe to be honest with their management, and particularly the leadership of the business, if there's no direct input between the boots on the ground and the leadership of the business, because that environment has never been created, even if it was an anonymous environment that the business could create where people could put suggestions into a suggestion box somewhere or something like that, so that it wasn't so pointed about who's raising these issues. However a business does it, they have to create an environment. If they want to be successful, they have to create an environment where their team members feel safe, and it's actually encouraged that people are honest about the business and ways in which they think the business could be improved, including the technology lens on the business. So the next step typically from there is you will want to assess the current technology stack. What's working, what's not, and why? What is working really, really well in the business, and what is it about that piece of technology that is allowing you to be efficient, that is allowing people to do a great job, that is allowing people to enjoy what they do, and be fulfilled in what they do on a daily basis, because the technology really is enabling them and empowering them to do a great job. So what's working great? What isn't working great? Where are the bottlenecks in the business? Where are systems that perhaps are not integrated, that aren't sharing data with each other, that need to be sharing data with each other to be able to work better or work at all? And what is the why? Where are the areas that we're strong and where we're weak? And why is that? So it's not good enough to simply say, oh, this piece of technology is working really, really well. Well, why is it working well? What is it about that implementation of that piece of the stack that is working well for the business? And why is it working well? What does it do? What functions does it do in the business that allows you to do what you do very well, or better than most, or better than almost anyone else? Now, what's not working? Also, again, we have to look at that through the lens of why. Why is it not working? Is it constraining the business? Is it not flexible enough? Is it not scalable enough? Is it too expensive for the business? Does it not does it not have the ability to integrate with other technologies that it needs to integrate with, because maybe it doesn't have an API layer? It's an on-premise piece of technology, and everything else in our stack is SaaS, and so we need to unplug that component that is on-premise, and we need to make it SaaS. We need to move to a SaaS alternative so that all of these pieces of technology are now SaaS, because as a business, we've made a conscious decision, a strategic decision to move to all SaaS technology wherever we can inside the business, because of cost and deployment timelines and whatever reasoning you have. So from there, we now need to identify the technology requirements and start to document those. We need to analyze those. We need to roadmap those, and we need to document those. So this is where we're starting to get into the BRD, the business requirements document of the business for a specific piece of technology, or a specific stack of technology, or a integration project, or whatever it might be. We now need to start to identify all those requirements, get them documented, analyze those, maybe even put them through a bit of a Moscow prioritization methodology, which is oftentimes what we need to do, so that we have the absolute must-haves, we have the must-haves, we have the would like to haves, and then we have the wish list kind of stuff, right? So we need to know kind of what are the prioritization of rolling out these pieces of technology to the business, and what are the expected benefits to the business, and what are the expected timeline for value. So basically, what is the time to value in terms of our expectations of both the upfront spend, so the CapEx, the OpEx, and then the time to value. What do we think? How fast do we think we're going to start getting a return on these investments? So there's obviously the commercial element of this in addition to the technical element of this, because you might have all of these pie in the sky expectations or hopes and dreams, but ultimately if you've got a champagne expectation on a beer budget, then you're going to have some real challenges in terms of unmet expectations inside the business. So we have to be realistic, but we also have to have some sort of stretch expectations there that says, okay, on our current trajectory in 12, 18, 24, 36 months, we expect to be here. So therefore, maybe we're going to invest early. Maybe we're going to invest today to be able to allow us the scalability and flexibility that we know we're going to need tomorrow on our current trajectory of growth. And so we have to plan ahead instead of waiting till we get there and then scrambling to try to keep up with our rate of growth. We want to get there slightly early. So we want to invest slightly early. We don't want to invest decades in advance, but we do have to invest early so that when we get to that place, we're ready to rock and we're ready to take advantage and execute on that opportunity when it hits. At that point, then you're going to go, of course, through your traditional, you're going to perform vendor and partner search and select process. You're going to look at the vendors of those technologies. You're going to go through the demo phases. You're going to make sure that it's going to meet your needs commercially and from a functional perspective. And then you're going to find whether the vendor does their own implementations of their own technology, which 99% of the time they don't. So for example, if you're going to be implementing Shopify or BigCommerce, whatever it may be, you then need to look at, okay, what is the agency partner that's actually going to be doing the implementation of a website on a Shopify or on a BigCommerce? So we go through a search and select process from there. Then from there, you need to move from requirements that you've documented and the technology, the target technology that you're going to build out this stack on, as well as the partner that's going to actually be doing the implementation. Then from there, then usually in conjunction with both the vendor and the partner that's going to be doing the implementation, you go into the full-blown solution design and architecture phase. And so you might have 2 or 3 partners that are going to be doing that for their individual components, but then you might have a system integrator that is going to allow those systems to all talk to each other, and that systems integrator needs to do integration, architecture, and design as well. So there's a lot to this. And again, when we think about how we do this, we've got a lot of supporting documentation. We've got a lot of supporting templates that can help ensure the success of this process. But from a high level, these are really the steps that you have to go through as a business to get to a better place from a technology perspective. Now, the final one, which is often overlooked and will often actually start with this phase we'll start with the people phase always, but then sometimes we'll jump straight into the data, because oftentimes the data will tell you more than what the people inside of an organization or inside of a business can tell you, because sometimes they don't even know themselves. When you ask them certain questions about their business, sometimes they may not know the answer to that, especially if they're relatively new to the business, but data will tell you fundamentally everything you need to know about a business. If I can get into a business and within the first hour of being in that business, if they can show me some of their sample product data, they can show me samples of their customer data, they can show me samples of the price list, they can show me samples of their analytics and their reporting, usually within an hour, I can tell that business where the gaps are, where the pain points are. I can tell them what they're already struggling with before they can even tell me. And sometimes their eyes will light up when I look at this data and I tell them, okay, based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like you're struggling with X, Y, and Z. Sometimes they go, wow, it's like you had a crystal ball. How did you know? Well, I was looking at the data, and the data tells me that. I've seen enough sample data across a whole range of businesses and a whole range of verticals and a whole range of go-to-market models that the moment that I look at customer data, product data, and analytics, all of a sudden now I go, wow, I've seen these patterns before with other businesses or other organizations. And so therefore I have a pretty good idea of the challenges that you're facing today and how we can go about fixing those challenges or addressing those challenges over time. And so we believe that absolutely data is foundational to digital transformation. You cannot have digital transformation in the absence of data analysis. You just cannot have it. And so from there, we start to look at, as I said, we look at customer and product data first, and then we also look at analytics and reporting. So from there, once we identify some of the challenges that a business may be having around data, sometimes there's systems that need to be introduced into the business to help deal with those data challenges. So we might have a PIM, a product information management platform, if they don't have one already. Sometimes a PIM is required to really organize that product data and enrich that product data in a meaningful way. in relation to specific channels, to specific markets, and specific data models. And so a PIM sometimes is required to achieve that. And when it comes to customer data, sometimes a CDP needs to be introduced to be able to get to a place where you can understand the customer data that you do have. Even if you've already got a CRM, for example, CRM is an operational platform. It is not a customer data platform. It holds customer data, but it's not fundamentally designed to be a customer data platform. It is fundamentally designed to be an operational platform. Again, from the point of a prospect or a lead right through to a sale. Sorry about that. My dog's gone absolutely crazy. But a CRM is fundamentally an operational platform. It is not designed generally to be your primary font of all knowledge around your customer and to do your segmentation inside of and to create those segments that then typically would get pushed out to a marketing automation platform. And so sometimes if they want to understand their customers better and they want to have better customer analytics, then they would need a CDP to achieve that, and a purpose-built system technology that actually does that and only that. And so therefore, you would typically plug, if you've already got a CRM, you'd plug your CRM as a data source into your CDP as well. You plug your marketing automation platform both as a source and a destination of data for the CDP. You would plug in, let's say you had a help desk platform like a Gorgeous, and you want some of the operational data out of those platforms as well. You might have an ERP with some historical legacy transaction data, or an e-commerce platform with some transaction data that also needs to go into a CDP. So a CDP is designed out of the box to be a customer data platform where you're able to do multi-channel segmentation and multi-customer segmentation inside that platform before those segments are then used elsewhere, typically in marketing platforms. And so sometimes we need a CDP to be able to address that data gap inside the business. Sometimes they need a CRM because they don't have a CRM today. They don't have an operational platform. Maybe sometimes they need a help desk platform like a Gorgeous because they don't have a help desk platform today. And so therefore, they're not using the data that comes out of customer service in a meaningful way in the business, or they can't use it in a meaningful way because they don't have a platform that allows them to do that and supports that type of analysis on customer data and the interactions that you're having with the customer. Sometimes it's a voice of customer platform like a Feedbackify that needs to be implemented on the website so that customers can have that closed feedback loop where they can give a piece of feedback from any page on the e-commerce website. So we need to look at all of the needs around data, customer, product, and analytics. We need to say, okay, what do you have today? What do you need to be able to get to that place of confidence around your data that maybe you don't have today? And what are some of the technologies or systems or processes we need to put into place to achieve that final goal of where you want to get to? So then from there, we need to look at the data and integration architecture. So what is the data architecture that we're going to use? Are we going to implement a data warehouse? Are we going to implement a data lake? Are we going to expect the CDP to effectively act as that data layer? So we start to look at, okay, what is the overall architecture that we're going to use to tie all these systems together so that they can share data in a meaningful way? And then how are they going to be integrated? Are they going to be integrated via CSV? Are they going to be integrated via API? How are they actually physically going to be integrated and sharing data with each other to make sure that each system has the data that it needs to perform the analysis that it needs to perform inside the system that provides meaningful insights back to the business and actionable insights back to the business. So we start to work out the architectural aspects of what that looks like. And then finally, we can perform vendor and partner search and select for those key components or those gaps that need to be filled. So that's really when we think about it, these are the core pieces that are foundational to digital transformation. It's very, very difficult for a business to be able to go through a meaningful digital transformation phase that leads to a good pace. And the other key thing to remember here is that this is a process, right? It's steps in a process. It's not a destination. So it's very much a journey. It is not a destination. And as new channels come to market, both marketing and sales channels come to market, then obviously those need to be added into the mix of your business, or at least considered to be added to the mix of your business over time. And so therefore, digital transformation is not a destination. It's not like, for example, let's say I come in and I do a massive piece of work with a client and we re-platform the ERP, we re-platform the CRM, their e-com, their WMS, their OMS, their point of sale system, their systems integration, the whole 9 yards. Even if I'm involved in an entire digital transformation process, and that might see them right for 3 to 5 years. But they're going to need to enhance that. They're going to need to revisit that at least on a yearly basis. They're going to need to make sure it's still fit for purpose. They need to make sure that those systems might, they might benefit from a little bit of reconfiguration. I know that NetSuite, just as an example, NetSuite recommends themselves, corporate NetSuite recommends that your NetSuite partner come in and do an annual review of all of your processes that are being run through NetSuite to make sure that both as NetSuite rolls out new functionality, because they roll out major deployments twice a year to NetSuite with additional and enhanced pieces of functionality, you might not be aware of that, or you might not be aware of how that could benefit your business on your existing stack. You might already be running NetSuite, but unless you have your NetSuite partner come in and do an audit at least every once or every 2 years to see if you're leveraging the platform to its maximum, you might never know. You might not know that you could use the platform and the technology better than you already are to achieve some of your business goals and to, I guess, be pillars of your business strategy. You don't know that that's possible because you don't know what's possible. And so therefore, what I recommend is, even if you've got a very modern stack and it's a full SaaS stack and it's fully integrated and it's sharing data and everything else, you need to do an annual, semi-annual, every two yearly audit to make sure that it's still configured optimally for your business, for the best efficiency in the business. So thank you very much, guys. Gareth, Naomi, Roy, awesome to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been super enjoyable. I know this is a little bit longer than I typically run. It's typically about 30 minutes for my lives on a Friday. But I really, really wanted to share this with you because I think hopefully it will start to reset some of the expectations when a business is looking to go through a digital transformation journey and they're thinking, God, we don't even know where to start with this. Well, you can start with this framework or a framework. I don't really care what framework you start with, but you need to have some boundaries. You need to have some guidelines. It's like bowling, right? When you go bowling, that when the kids come to bowl, they've got those bumpers, right, that they fold down, and then they've got the little ramp that kids can put their ball on, their bowling ball, and they can push it down the ramp, and then they don't get gutter balls because they've got these bumpers that make sure that the ball stays going down the middle of the alley, and at least they're going to take out some, some pins at the end of the day. And so by having a framework, it doesn't mean you're guaranteeing the success of any digital transformation project, but you're stacking the deck in your favor, and you're helping to mitigate risk right up front. You're helping to minimize risk right up front so that you can at least guarantee some outcome as opposed to a completely failed project or a completely failed process. So hopefully you found this helpful. I'll share this with you guys. I'll go back to all of you who have commented on this live, and I'll just share the PDF of this presentation with you, and hopefully you find it interesting. Hopefully you find it helpful. Gareth says WAF and WAS, not exactly sure what that's referring to, but I'm happy to speak to that if we can have a discussion offline, or you can put some additional information in the live stream questions there. So thank you very much for joining me. Really enjoyed the time with you guys today. Would love to have discussions with you guys further about this in the comments and in future lives. So have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Have a fantastic weekend, and look forward to catching up with you next Friday. Speak soon, guys. Bye-bye.